This is where we're at. And this is all the fabric that's left to add to it. Bunch of cording and cuffs. We're going to start with the cuffs. Let me show you how to do that real quick. We have two pieces. Right side to right side. I have 1/2 inch and 1/2 inch marked because it's where we're going to stop, cut the fabric, fold it, resew the edges. I have the centers marked just because it's easier to line everything up that way. All we do pin these together. So at 1/2 inch, we're going to turn, do 1/2 inch, turn, do 1/2 inch. Snip the corners, flip it right side out, and do the same thing on the other one. What I got going on with the sleeve so far? We've flipped the cuff right side out, pinned it so the opening is right at the inner seam, pinned it all the way around. Now I'm going to put the lining on top of it this way. Let me show you what I mean by that. I've got the lining on top of the jacket, so it's right side to right side. We can only do this for this sleeve. The next sleeve is a little more complicated, but not much. I find doing it this way helps make sure the sleeve isn't twisted inside the jacket. All we're going to do is pin this, pin the lining to the shell and the pocket, and then do a 1/2 inch seam, maybe zigzag on the top, we'll see. We're going to do a 1/2 inch seam, we're going to do a zigzag on top of it, flip everything right side out. And then that sleeve will be done. Here it is. Once everything's pulled right side out, you got to pull the lining through the sleeve, but once it's pressed, that's going to be amazing. I'm very happy with this. Everything fits nice, it looks good, it's starting to fully line up. Like I said, the other sleeve's a little more complicated, because if we did that, what we just did with this sleeve, the whole thing would have crossed over weird. So, first thing I'm going to do is pin the cuff onto the sleeve. I absolutely know there's a way more easy way of doing this. This is super convoluted. What I've done is I put the jacket on, I put the lining in, so I can make sure that the inner seam and the inner seam on the lining all match up. I pulled the lining all the way through, and then pin it right side to right side. So when I pull it all the way through, we've got a nice finish seam. Now I'm going to pull the sleeve all the way out, turn the whole thing inside out. Ow. Poke myself a bunch. I only do the first part just to make sure that the inner seam is lined up properly. Now I'm going to reach in the right way. So I'm reaching into the right side of the sleeve. I pull the lining in more. It's the most complicated part of the whole jacket, in my opinion. So what we've done is I've got the sleeve stuffed back in the sleeve, so I can continue to pin around and then do a 1/2 inch seam allowance and zigzag. So let me pin, show you what everything looks like. Maybe I can explain it a little better. So again, the shell sleeve is inside out, right? And I kind of just stuff this in and then back out. So I have the right side on the right side and the wrong side exposed. That way when we do our 1/2 inch stitch, turn everything right side out, this is completely encased inside the shell itself. There's an easy way of doing it. I just always worry about, I don't know, maybe misaligning it. Everything gets twisted. Then you put your sleeve on and the lining's all twisted. I do it the first way, or the way I showed you, because it's a way for me to double check to make sure I'm not doing something wrong, because I tend to. So we're going to do 1/2 inch seam allowance, zigzag stitch, and we're going to pull everything right side out. All right. So, in theory, if I reach in here, hey, look at that. Second sleeve, completely done. Just gonna take a moment to enjoy the fact that both sleeves are done. Because I wasn't paying attention, and I was in a hurry to get all this done, I need to pull the seams from in between these two pins. Now we're going to turn the whole thing inside out. We need this open, because this is where we're going to pull the whole jacket right side out in the end, and then, you know, heat seam this little area here. It's better than doing it on the bottom. In the lining is the best place. And I prefer right here. It's easiest. So I'm going to pull this seam out. I'm going to do a little bit of reinforcing on this side of the pin and on this side of the pin on the top stitch. Then we'll get back together and I'll show you what we're going to do from there. So there it is. That is big enough that we will fit the entire jacket all the way through. Now we need to turn it inside out. Like everything else, we're going to pin and sew, put cording in all the way around, because sure, why not, right? Speaking of cording, this was this many feet. It's a lot. It's a lot of cording to go all the way around the entire perimeter of the jacket. So I had to combine a couple of pieces, right? And make sure I use at least 1 inch on each end. That way we don't have just this huge bump right in the middle. It kind of tapers out a little bit and it's way less noticeable. But like everything else that we put cording on, we're going to find the middle and find the middle. Pin the whole thing. Luckily the middle is right here. Pin it all the way around, stitch, and then turn it right side out. I have the top collar all pinned. It's marked at a 1/2 inch, so we're going to sew to that mark, cut, fold, sew all the way down, not sew the sleeves, turn, and then meet in the middle. We'll pick back up when I'm at the middle. So I've done the whole thing, the whole back. I've got about an inch or so here that needs to be done. What I'm going to do is I'm going to split this seam all the way back to here. Right? So it gives me about an inch. I'm going to fold it over and stitch it. Since I know where everything lines up, I now know exactly where I need to stitch everything together. Let's cut this one so it's about the same. Fold that back. Go up there. I could have done the math to figure all this out beforehand about where I would exactly need and cut and fold. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of math. So I'm going to do a stitch all the way across here. I'll just show you. Tight, that should be perfect. I'm going to cut the excess cording off. Fold this down, fold that flat, and then stitch straight across here. It's not going to create a perfect seam because I would have to pull this stitch a little more for that to work perfect. But it'll be good enough for what we're doing here. So I'm just going to stitch straight across to connect these two seams. Normally when you're working with cording, you can't get as close to the edge as you want on your first stitch. So I tend to come back with a second stitch. I'm just going to do that now and go completely across everything. And then we should be done sewing. Should be. Now we have to fit everything we just did. There's a little tiny hole. Actually easier than it seems. I tend to start with sleeves because they're large and in the way. Just carefully feed everything through. Take your time. Find the other sleeve. Once the other sleeve pops out, we're going to have a lot more room. There we go. And that's just a matter of pulling everything through. There we go. Done. Two things still have to happen. Put the buckles on, and then sew the patch on the sleeve, because I wasn't paying attention. Patch could have easily been sewn on before we put the lining together. Would have been way easier. Now I'm going to have to fight with it. Not a big deal. It needs to be pressed, because it looks kind of fluffy right now. But I am very, very happy with this one. It turned out fantastic. So, the problem. The buckles I'm having made aren't going to be ready for about a month, at least. So the next video is going to be in a bit. In that video, I'm going to go over buckles, how I had them made, the companies I contacted, and the general cost of something like that. Getting custom buckles made in China is it's a bit daunting at first, but it's not that bad. I've had a lot of practice as the IOC merchandise and branding officer. I've made a few things in China. But jacket. The next video is going to be putting the buckles on and the patterns. For now, I'm going to call it done because, like I said, I can't do much until I get the buckles in. So next week we'll be on to something new. But for now, go practice piloting your Viper.